The Wisdom of Gore 6. What does it mean to be human? Man is the only creature that refuses to be what he is. Albert Camus. Perhaps as ancient as the philosophical question, what is the meaning of life, is the question, what does it mean to be human? John Norman's books often get criticism for presenting a human ideal that is little more than barbarism. Typically, this is leveled at the Gorean saga because of a political agenda on part of the critic. Seen objectively, Norman's conclusion about what it means to be human is one of the most compelling arguments I think I have ever heard. The difficulty becomes that his conclusion is never expressly stated at once, but spread out over several novels. I believe that in Priest Kings of Gore, we see the end of a 3-novel-long arc of Tarl Cabot learning to express what it means to be a human male. Now, please notice how I said that, because it is part of what has caused the Norman controversy. Norman holds that what it means to be human is dependent upon the gender of the human being. What it means to be human, therefore, is different for a man than what it means to be human for a woman. This may seem sexist, which is the main thrust of the accusation by his detractors. But as we discover more about how human biology affects the human mind, particularly brain scans, which have proven that human males and human females use different parts of the brain and therefore probably think differently. And interestingly enough, that people that have body dysphoria, what people commonly call transgenderism, that their brain actually resembles the opposite sex more than the one they were born into. It becomes a conclusion that, frankly, might be inescapable. If you think of a Venn diagram and label one circle male and the other female, Norman would argue that the place where the two circles overlap is the minority quanta of what it means to be human, and therefore doesn't really apply. This shared set of data cannot be the whole, in Norman's view, of what it means to be a human for a man, and likewise for a woman. Instead, we should look at the greater circle of the Venn diagram, which are each separately labeled man and woman, and apply them accordingly. But unlike Norman, I believe that shared ground between the two circles is indeed the stable cornerstone of what it means to be human, and I believe that Norman unwillingly presents this to the reader. But that's another video, and that was a bit long-winded, so let's see if I can surmise it a bit better. In Priest Kings of Gore, Tarl Cabot is presented with two characters, Mul Alka and Mul Baka, who appear to be identical human males. He is surprised when Sarm asks Tarl to identify the twin who was created, synthesized as it were, rather than born, and Tarl cannot do it. Here begins the question, what does it mean to be human? And we are given it with one human being who was naturally born and another one that was made in a lab, like a machine or a refrigerator. If Mul Alka and Mul Baka are genetic duplicates, but one was not born naturally, are they both human? This question in science fiction has been handled so many times that a reader today may simply shrug their head and say, hey, they're both organic, therefore they're both human. Yet so is a fetus. Organic, that is. And yet there are many people that would not believe it to be human until it was born. I don't happen to be one of those, by the way. So do you really believe that if a human being could be that grown from scratch, that people would consider to be as human as someone who is naturally born? When artificial insemination, commonly called test tube babies, became possible, the Catholic Church had to make a ruling about whether or not such people had souls. This is how strong the biological prejudice is to a human being. You see, Norman is hinting that we believe, at least subconsciously, that to be human is to be an organic living thing. As such, we tend to see anything that might change that process as making a person less human. It even shows up in games such as Cyberpunk, with stats such as a humanity rating, where the more techno-goodies you get, the less human you become. Yeah, I played that Artaz Lorien game. I loved it. Now, you remember my last video when I spoke about the rigidity of human cultures and how they constrain our thinking? Here, Sarm and Misk believe that the two people they are presenting Tarl with are human merely because they are organic beings. They even praise the physical virtues of the bodies of Mul'Alka and Mul'Baka. And here enters Norman's very compelling argument about what it means to truly be human. When Tarl is asked if he believes that the two clones can be distinguished or if they're admirable, the following passage takes place. Tarl speaking first. You call these perfect human beings, waving my arms towards the two slaves? Of course, said Sarm. Of course, said Misk. Perfect slaves, I said. The most perfect human being is of course the most perfect slave, said Sarm. The most perfect human being, I said, is free. A look of puzzlement seemed to appear in the eyes of the two slaves. They have no desire to be free, said Misk. Then he addressed the two slaves. What is your greatest joy, Mulls? He asked. To be slaves of the priest kings, they said. You see? Asked Misk. Yes, I said. I see that they are not men. Priest kings of Gore. Norman's central idea is that a human male is free. Freedom is a human virtue. The freedom to live as one wishes, where one wishes, for what one wishes. When that is denied, then the human being is no longer a human being and is reduced to being an object even lower than how Goreans view slaves. While Norman restricts this to human males, I would argue that I believe it to be true of all human beings regardless of gender. I believe this to be evident, though I suspect that living Goreans would suggest that when a woman calls herself a Kajira, she is expressing how she wishes to live and thus is still actually acting with freedom. But we'll return to that concept in another video when we talk about what being human means in Norman's view as a woman. I should say, what being a human means to Norman if the human being is a woman. For now, let us return to Norman's argument that taking away a person's freedom, to the point where they no longer desire to be free, removes their humanity. This is what the priest kings have done to their slaves, the Mulls, and how the priest kings view humanity. Since the priest kings consider themselves a higher form of life, we shouldn't be surprised. This goes against a concept that Norman himself probably agrees with. Freedom, noun. To ask nothing, to expect nothing, to depend on nothing. Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead. In our world currently, if you disagree with the popular opinion, you can be ostracized, rendered unemployed, or even physically attacked. Murder has occurred over political disagreements, not among politicians which have power, but over fellow citizens. This has been allowed because various political factions wish to remove the greatest stumbling block to their control of the human race, that of the freedom of the human mind to disagree. If the only idea available in the marketplace of ideas is a bad one, then there's nothing better to compare it to and is no longer recognized as being detrimental. It's a Henry Ford tactic. You can have any color of car you want so long as it's black. You can have as much freedom as you like so long as you do what we say. This is exactly how Mul'Alka and Mul'Baka have been enculturated. When they are informed that they need to report, voluntarily mind you, for execution, they only end up questioning the order because of Tarl Cabot, an outsider to their culture, pointing out how bass-ackwards this idea is. Yeah, I said bass-ackwards. I is a southerner, and sometimes colloquialisms take over my mouth when I'm speaking. In a later scene, Tarl preserves the life of Vika, and Mul'Alka and Baka ask him, "Is it human to act as you do?" "Yes," I said. "It is a part of the man to protect the female of the humankind, regardless of who she may be." Here is the Gorean idea of men embodying strength as a virtue. Now here is expressed in the form of physical strength in the facing down of threats of violence, but Norman also means, as we see in other Gorean novels, that strength of character is intended. In this same passage, the Mulls, Alka and Baka, remark that Tarl does not think of them as men, and Tarl counters that he does think of them as men because they've informed him of Sarm's murderous intentions. Which brings us to another element of what it means to be human according to Norman: moral integrity and loyalty. Norman's heroes do not forsake their companions nor betray them. They face down monsters, swordsmen, and death for their fellows, and even those that simply share the shared trait of being human. Norman's heroes are self-sacrificing, something I notice many critics overlook. They also perform acts they believe to be ethically, not morally correct. Now, ethics and morality are often confused. Ethics are, philosophically speaking, what is truly good or evil. Murder is ethically evil. Rape is ethically evil, etc. Morals are standards of behavior that are accepted as being right or wrong according to accepted standards. You could have a society, for instance, where theft would be considered right, even though it is an ethical evil. I prefer to say proper and improper when it comes to morality, as this clarifies things, as the terms right and wrong are often linked in the mind of the listener to good and evil. It is clear that Tarl Cabot does not give a flip about what is proper. He cares about what is good or evil. Norman's Gorian society may have endorsed a wide variety of evil as being proper behavior, but through Tarl's eyes, we see that he is odds with the morality, and seeking the higher ethics, he seeks instead to do what he truly believes to be in alignment with the good in the Platonic sense. In this same passage, Alka and Balka asked to accompany Tarl that they, quote, might too learn to be men, end quote. And here we have another component mirrored in Tarl's objection to the state of Alka and Balka before Sarm and Misk that is important to what it means for a human being to be a man. Boys are born, men are made, goes an old Southern proverb. Anyone can be born a male, but becoming a man is an effort of training and enculturation. The effectiveness of this training in meeting the social, moral, professional, and ethical actions of being a man can be gauged and judged by... Let me repeat that. Boys are born, men are made, goes an old Southern proverb. Anyone can be born a male, but becoming a man is an effort of training and enculturation. The effectiveness of this training in meeting the social, moral, professional, and ethical responsibilities of being a man can be gauged and judged by others by that person's actions. Hence we have the saying that when someone is overcome by cowardice, avarice, vengeance, lust, or greed, or any other behavior that might harm another or themselves, we consider them to be unmanly. That concept that being a man is reliant upon admirable behavior is nearly universal. In Yiddish, we refer to it as being a mensch. In the Christian tradition, we call such men a saint. In the Taoist tradition, they are called sages, and in the traditions of martial arts training, we call them warriors, karateka, or knights. Throughout the Gorian novels, the male heroes are presented with this ethical backbone. Disciplined minds and spirits, according to Norman, are part of what it means to be a human being. When the war in the nest finally gets underway, Mul Alka and Mul Balka participate in the side of Tarl and Misk. When the war ends, the two moles are seen talking with Tarl, and they inform him that they are considering taking female moles as mates. Now I realize that this might not seem like an ethical issue about what it means to be a man. Men, naturally, biologically, wish to have sex. But the implication here by the moles is that they are not just taking some pleasure slaves. They are beginning relationships. Norman shows us Tarl Cabot attracting female lovers wherever he adventures, but always placing them by the wayside as he seeks out what happened to Talena, his lover from the first novel, whom he is incredibly loyal to. Norman believes that for a human being to be a man, he must be involved in a relationship with a woman. He agrees with Benjamin Franklin. This is from a letter that Franklin wrote to one of his friends. Marriage is the proper remedy. It is the most natural state of man, and therefore the state in which you are most likely to find solid happiness. Your reasons against entering into it at present appear to me not well founded. The circumstantial advantages you have in view by postponing it are not only uncertain, but they are small in comparison with that of the thing itself, the being married and settled. It is the man and woman united that make the complete human being. Separate, she wants his force of body and strength, of reason. He, her softness, sensibility, and acute discernment. Together they are more likely to succeed in the world. A single man is not nearly the value he would have in that state of union. He is an incomplete animal. He resembles the odd half of a pair of scissors. If you get a prudent, healthy wife, your industry and your profession, with her good economy, will be a fortune sufficient. This is not just a feature of Tarl's character. We see it back in Turnsman of Gore with Marlenus, who's grieving his lost wife. We see it with Parkour, who wishes to marry Talena to cement his claims upon Ar. We see it in Outlaw, with the love affair, and then later the accepting of duties of Tarl and the Tatrix of Tharna. We see it here in Priest Kings, with Tarl and his attraction to care for and to protect Vika, even after she has treated him crossly. I have often heard detractors claim that the Gorean ethic is one of males being purely hedonistic sex addicts, but this ignores the actions and lifestyles of the heroes of the series. To recap the above succinctly, in Priest Kings of Gore, Norman presents us that to be a true human male, one must 1. Have freedom of mind from constraints of limited thinking. 2. Possess strength both physical and ethical. 3. Express loyalty to fellows and compassion to the deserving. 4. Refine their character, discipline themselves. 5. Protect women and those they are entrusted to from harm. And 6. Be part of a marriage and family. Hardly the hedonistic sex addict barbarians that they are often claimed to be